Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. How was your lunch? How was your trip here? Are you having a good afternoon? Right on. I got to practice my St. Jonathan. I got to do my deep voice. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. Did that pass? So, and then this, the other word, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. So, welcome here, everybody. We're going to get everything going, and we're going to start with the welcome to the territory by Songhees elder Skip Dip. A very, very cool guy.
I finally got my own talking stick. My dear friends, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen, Asa Lachichalach, the name that was given to me by my family, so that I know my land and my family, and I know that I belong somewhere. The only reason why I really keep saying that is for yourself to appreciate the name that you have, that you belong to that family and you got somewhere to belong. And I just encouraging you to really appreciate that. It's a small thing, but it has so much meaning when you're down and out. And just whenever we're going to welcome our young people, it's always a ceremony for clearing the way. When our students leave home, we have a ceremony. When they come home, we have a ceremony. And it's really just because we love the young people so much, we want to make sure their way is clear. But today, in contemporary times, we want this example of what's happening as a clearing away and a hope for the future, or we're building on the future, making more bridges, and it's so wonderful. With that, I want to say welcome to our Lekwungen territory. Eyēʔ. Have a good day. Pause for applause.
My Cree name is Kiwit no te mai mi te sikhaganina at biumuims te heka inis, but you can call me Art. At this time, I would like to introduce Elder May Sam to share a prayer and blessing to get us going in a good way. Let's pull this off and hold it pretty close.
Close?
Yeah, there you go. Now we can hear you.
Close? Okay. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. It's a beautiful day. Hayashka for inviting me, Janice, Sandy, and to do the opening prayer and blessing for a special event today. It has so much meaning. Switstisiat and Nesna to need Malachar. Hulkaminam in this call. My first language is in Cauchy. And to do the blessing, to ask the Creator to send blessings down to you in each and every way and throughout your family, from the youngest to the oldest, in your communities where you're from, to bless each and every one. Hayashka. Chunamix nas, man say to manas, ti sonder spray, slalom stay. Masi Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen ten Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. Eyēʔ the things Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen this lakelst. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. No was the in Guamcomston in Sqαυ'lewen. Eyēʔ the mug. It's a wattle. Helping one another. Eyēʔ the things Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen this lakelst. I praise and I thank the Creator for each and every one helping the children, our youth, our future generation, helping them and giving them a helping hand in their daily walk, in their education, to never give up and never walk backwards, keep walking forward in their daily life, to help them in each and every way. Masi Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. To acknowledge the land that we're on here, Lagwanan Srimetal, Senich Tamuch, Zichumi Lalmatau, Slachens durch the Rachen Tamuch, Saak, Asi, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. A blessing for each and every one here in this beautiful building. Bless this building. Take care of each and every one, all of the staff, all of the hard workers. Thank you, Art.
Thank you. Please be seated. Yeah, Camosun's been a big part of all our lives. Like it started so long ago. I remember from my res, my aunts and uncles went to Camosun, and they came back with spouses that were not from our territory at all. And now there's Kwakwakiwa kids and Cree kids like running around all over the damn place. Actually, they're adults. They've got their own children now. So we've made like family connections all over the place. And one elder, he's an elder now. He wasn't an elder back then. That came to Camosun. It was really his first time in the city. And you know, you all probably cooked a lot of KD back in the college days, and noodles and wieners. And yeah, he got kind of tired of that city food, the fancy city food. He grew up on wild game. And so he thought he could kill a goose at Beacon Hill Park. So he did. So there's a lot of stories about those first ones that went off to college. At this time, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the president of Camosun, Sherry Bell. There's supposed to be somebody else.
Thanks, Art. Good afternoon, everyone. How many people are here to find a husband or a wife or a partner? And we don't, you know, we've just finished Art celebrating. This is the culmination of our 50th anniversary celebrations, and it's just the perfect way to do it. But that story that you told, both of those stories weren't part of our archives, but now will be, because this is being videotaped, so it'll be there forever. So thank you for that. I'd like to acknowledge the territory that we're on today, the territory that Camosun College, both of our campuses are on, the territory of the Kwanghan and Wasanich people, who we are honored to live on, work on, and play on. And we recognize and acknowledge and thank them for their gracious hospitality to our students and our employees here. I also want to say a huge thank you to Art for joining us today. And May, you're incredible. Today we're looking at the past and looking at the wonderful alumni that you're going to meet in a few minutes. Last night, we had the privilege of looking out at current students and embracing them. And your beautiful way of starting us just puts our souls in the right spirit to embrace each other. And Skip, as always, thank you for your opening, because I think without you doing that, we can't start anything, because that's what you are, who starts anything that's important at Camosun College. So thank you to you both. And maybe let's give them a hand for the work that they do. Thank you. They're pretty important people to Camosun, as are other elders that are here with us today. Thank you for joining us. And our board chair is here today. Thank you, Monty, for coming. Sandy and Janice, you must be exhausted, because these two women have done so much to prepare for last night and today. So let's give them a big round of applause before, yeah. So as I said, this is the last event of our 50th anniversary, and there are a lot of volunteers. There's Jody, and I know there's people behind the scenes here that have worked really hard to make all of this happen, and they'll have a big rest over the weekend too, because they've been running around ensuring that everything flows. So huge thank you to them. And you know, you're here to listen to amazing alumni. And if you're a student in the room, could you just put your hand up? You will be an alumni at some point, and you may be asked to come back and share your stories of, maybe at the 70th anniversary or the 60th anniversary. Thank you for choosing Camosun. We love you, and we're glad that you've come to have your educational journey with us. And on that, I'm going to transition to what you've been waiting for. There's people behind the scenes here that are standing, and they can't wait to get out to share with you their stories. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce to Scott Sam, who's going to come on out and drum in our guest speaker. So over to you. Thank you.
Do you need the mic, sir? Okay, he's going to make his way. And it's absolutely true. May's words are very, very powerful. I was going to go party tonight, and now I can't. So what a buzzkill, man. Okay, Scott. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Art. My traditional name is Sqà'lewen. My other name is Scott. I'd say my SIN number, but I don't want to give it out. It's Art's fault. It kind of got me into a goofy mood. I think it was the partying he was talking about. No, I haven't done that for a long time. But yeah, sorry about that. I was honored. I want to thank Sandy for inviting me here today, share a song. I'm always glad to share a song. That was a song that came to me, I'm not even 94, 95. And I call that one my welcome song. Eventually I started singing with Toby Joseph, and we Unity drummers, but yeah, we Toby and I actually were up at a conference with Art in Williams Lake, I think, and we thought we need to find a name for ourselves, and Toby said OCM, and I said, yeah, we should use that. And so we've called ourselves OCM for a while, and we've said our culture matters with it, and also our children matter. So I just wanted to explain that that song came to me quite a few years ago, and I'm really thankful. I was told by my elders, take care of what you have and it'll take care of you. And that's what I do with each and every drum that I have that's been given to me. And so thank you for listening. Hi, Scott.
Thank you, Scott. Just a tiny bit of housekeeping. The women's washrooms are in the first aisle, and the next little hallway are the men's, and I think there's other washrooms for other people as well. If you could kindly turn off your cell phones. We are on Zoom land. Welcome out there in Zoom world, those of you with pants or without pants. We have to wear pants here. So cell phones off, and I'll explain how this is going to work. We're going to have about 2.5 minutes for each participant to answer the first question. And the first question is, we want to know when you were at Camosun, can you share one thing that you learned here when you were at Camosun? And first gentleman I'll introduce, he has a new name now, and I'm going to try and, when I met him, he was Stolquist, but now, Jasankton. Mr. John Elliott is a respected elder from Saulteau. Of course, you all know that he plays a pivotal role in the preservation and revitalization of Shinchothan. He's a historian, a mentor, language warrior, traditional knowledge keeper, and a gifted teacher, and probably something you don't know, he loves the blues. Ladies and gentlemen. She's got the mic there.
It's great to see him. The whiteness, quietness, quietness, Elliott CM. Just think to the next quietness there. Elliott and Elliott here. My name is Jasankton, and my English name is John Elliott. And I went to Camosun College way back in 74, 75, I think it was. And had a good time there. We were pretty young back then, so it was a lot of fun going to school. And well, what did I learn over there? I learned that Camosun College at that time was putting in place some of our own people. And I felt accepted by that. And my student advisor back then was Skip Dick. Yeah. And late Philip Paul was our representative from Saanich working with Camosun those days. And so that's all I'll say. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much, John. So, Sandy, you'll see her here with her hand raised. She's going to be help us keep on track with the time. She'll give you like a 1 minute. She'll use her fingers to just to keep us all on track. She's got a hook. So I've known Nella since I was a little boy playing basketball. I got kicked off the high school team. I went to Vic High in grade 12 and got kicked off the team for fighting, so they recruited me for rugby. And I got picked up by a Native men's team. I didn't even know there was a Native men's team, and her husband Alex and I played together. I was just a 17-year-old punk playing with all these men, and Thorne was on that team. And so I've known her since way back when. And, since then she's accomplished a lot. She doesn't need a whole lot of introduction. I believe everybody knows her and knows all about her accomplishments. So I'll let Nella tackle that question of something you learned when you were here.
Nella Nelson, yes. I was in Camosun in 1972. And it was really awesome because I went to live with Art Thompson, Kathy, and thank heavens they took Renee Taylor and I in because we were just rookies. One of the things was I was graduated from Carson Graham in North Vancouver, and I went with Alec to UBC and sit in his class, and there was 150 people. I went, nah, too many people. Dixon Taylor, Skip Dick, a lot of them were working at Camosun at the time. Kathy, so we bombed over to Camosun and registered. I registered for the university transfer program. And what I learned was that was a time when we were having protests in Vancouver for racism, discrimination. Sometimes I was protesting, following my sister, and I didn't know what I was protesting about. But I knew it was injustice. But when I came to Camosun and I realized there was a strong team there, and I realized I could be anything I wanted to be, and I could do anything I wanted to do. And even though that was a springboard for moving up to the University of Victoria, that was kind of the shift and change that I felt was happening in 1972. And then I married my husband, yeah.
And another woman I've known for quite a while now because she recruited me to serve on a jury for the Arts Council. That's how we first met. And I bumped into her at a lot of arts festivals since and some other juries since. She's contributed a lot to the development of the arts, Aboriginal arts in BC and beyond. And her accomplishments also go on and on. She's Anishinaabe and Irish. It's not her fault. Here's Kathy Charleswary.
Miigwech. Kathy Charleswary, Indigenous cause, Anishinaabe, Winsawin, Migazi, Bamashianakwe, Anishinaabe, Minjikaning, Rama, Ndao, and I currently live in Saanich. Yeah, I was in the visual arts department here at Camosun. I started in '89, graduated in '91. So I think I was in a gap when there wasn't really an Indigenous office. It was just before Janice started, and but I did get the Wilna Thomas Award, which was for Indigenous students at the time, which was really validating. And in the visual arts program, which is very rigorous, very demanding, really hard work, but balanced by a generosity. I had amazing instructors. It was like a dream team. And then also you're with the same cohort of students for 2 years, so there's a lot of support to get through all that hard work. And generosity with materials and facilities and equipment, so it was kind of a dream, and I realized very quickly that I wasn't lacking intelligence, which I did think at the time from experiences growing up, and I wasn't crazy. I was an artist, And I have a creative mind. Like, my mind works differently. I do a lot of tangential thinking and think in circles, and it was like the first time that I was in an environment where that's what worked, and was forced to try a lot of things that I wouldn't have tried voluntarily around, like different techniques and materials and ways of making art. Like, I was painting illustrative imagery when I entered school, and I thought it was pretty good, and that's what I was going to do, but we had to do ceramics and photography and performance art and sound, video, sculpture, painting, drawing, like every kind of expression you could imagine. And having to dig that deep and work that hard, I really started, and within that supportive environment, I really started finding my authentic voice. Because when you're expressing in that intense way, you can only tell the truth. And I also realized that art was a way of expressing that authentic voice, but also it's a way of talking about issues that really matter. It's a way of asking questions, a way of investigating life. And I realized that what I thought and what I had to say mattered. And so, similar to what my friends here have said, I realized that I could do anything. I started really waking up, like my spirit was really waking up. And another thing that we did in the arts program, I'm probably going over time, but Sandy's distracted. We did a lot of critiquing of each other's work. So I learned to give and accept constructive criticism. Very important in this world, to be able to have a conversation with people that you don't agree with, and to listen and be influenced by each other, and to still be together and work together, even if you don't agree on everything. Miigwech.
Miigwech. Speaking of an Irish blood, I myself am Cree, Dene, and Irish. This sacred mingling of intertribal blood is precisely why I look like an overfed Mongolian baby. With an overgrown forehead. Ladies and gentlemen, Dano Thorne, Halkaminam from Cowichin. He serves currently as the Youth and Recreation Sports Director for Pachidot First Nation and the NIFA Soccer Society. And just the other day, he was inducted into the BC Soccer Hall of Fame. How about a nice hand? Okay, question one, sir.
Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. Antha Quatliakinam Cowitson Mustimuch Sanchathan Not Samat Sqαυ'lewen Homuch Mustimuch Eyēʔ Camosun Siam Mustimuch Siam Mustimuch Eyēʔ Quam Tin Sqαυ'lewen Homuch Mustimuch Siam Eyēʔ Siam Nasiaya. Good afternoon. My Indian name's Dano Thorne. I'm from Cowichin, and my late mother was from the Saanich Saartip Nation, and I wanted to acknowledge the elders and our respected leaders from the Lekwungen for allowing us to be in their territory, as well as the hosting school and the people that are here, non-native and native. So thank you, and wanted to thank these respected leaders for joining us to share stories. I moved out of Cowichin to Victoria in 1984 to open up my, to get away from a place that I wasn't at, to find a good path. And I moved in late August '84, and I spent 3 years in taking recreation courses at 85, 86, and 87, and I started working at the Friendship Center. And realized that sports and recreation was a door opener for a career. And as you will hear later, as it became the foundation of who I am and what I've done with our people over the last 30 years. And Camosun opened that door for me. And again, it gave me the opportunity to learn to be by myself, to be proud of who I am, and to take a good path in learning my culture. And I'm still learning that. So every chance I get, I practice my language, and it brings that good feeling from here. And like I said, I know a lot of the people here, and a lot of the people that they're married to or partners that have influenced my late Art was very influential. I know his family very well. But that's what school can do. Hard to leave, but now there is Indigenous sector in every school that provides the necessary tools for when we're away from home. And it's taught me a lot, and I continue a path of health and wellness. And I again work at the education department at Pachadat and work with children and youth. And through my NEEF organization, provide opportunities for our kids to travel the world. And again, with Eyēʔ, we were the first in Canada to lead in sports. So those are really foundation builders. And again, I appreciate the language and the culture that's shared. Because when we were young, it wasn't rampant. Now it is. There's a recognition of everything that is about our people and the territories we're in. And it starts building dreams for our youth, our Shmanams and our Stilikath. So I look forward to hearing the stories of everyone, and it's good to see my friend again.
Thank you very much, Dano. I myself actually never went to Camosun. I'd worked there for a year, school year. Thanks to Janice, she was my boss. Well, I went to Grant MacEwan in Edmonton, and I took First Nation Studies because I was convinced that would be the easiest to pass. I got a C. I should have cheated from that white girl with glasses who sat in front of me. At this time, remember again, the question is, one thing you learned while you were at Camosun. I'm going to turn things over to Charlene Thompson Reed. She's New Charlotte. She works with Asthma Child and Family Services, and I believe she worked at Camosun as an advisor for a while.
Good afternoon. My name is Eyēʔ Sqliwon. I come from Zishat, New Tonalth Nation. What did I learn? So when I first started at Camosun, I was deathly afraid. I had dropped out in grade 8, so I never had the experience of going to middle school or high school. So my self-esteem was quite low, but my late husband encouraged me to go. He pushed me. He actually shoved me out the door. He told me that education is the ladder of success and out of poverty. And yeah, it truly does work. But when I got to Camosun, it was so different. I came from a small town where I only knew New Tonalth people. And then when I moved to Victoria, I met and found so many dear friends from all over BC, the prairies, and really close dear friends from Kwakwaka'wakw and Coast Salish. My late husband was the social butterfly out of our relationship, so he dragged me and my family around everywhere. What did I learn? Self-esteem, I think. And my motivator was Janice. Janice had just got an office in the admin building upstairs, and I was at her door every day. She probably was getting sick of me. I didn't know my path. I just knew I was there, and I was taking courses. Janice had time for me all the time. Yeah, tears in my eyes thinking about those days. I was at Camosun in 91 to 94, and then I went on to get my bachelor's degree at UVic, and came back and worked with Janice as an education advisor, and those were great days. We had a lot of fun sitting on boards with Nella. Janice, yeah, these two were really hard workers, and they taught me well. I really admire both of you, you know, a lot. Like I said, I was so afraid to go back, and that's why I came back as an education advisor, because I knew how afraid I was to walk through those doors and meet new people, not only my own people, but non-Native people. You know, I always feared that I was less than, that I wasn't smart enough, and by golly, I was. And I'll share some more later.
Thank you very much, Charlene. So our next presenter to answer that question is a misplaced Haida. He went to Cree country and decided he could never leave. I tried the other way. I went to Haida Gwaii and they kicked me out after a week. Frank Shannon is an Indigenous counselor specializing in children and youth in care who have experienced complex trauma, and he's based in Treaty 6 territory of Edmonton. So here's Frank Shannon. He's a good cook too. We cooked together before.
Thank you, Art. I actually don't mind these masks because it hides my halibut cheeks and my COVID chin. Not that I'm insecure. The mirror never lies. Thank you so much. Again, I'll blame all that goofy Raven stuff on this guy behind me. I was going to keep serious, but I just like to acknowledge the land and the first people of the land here. It's so nice to come back. I've been away for a long time, and especially over this pandemic, I haven't gone even back to Haida Gwaii. This is my first trip away, first trip talking to people that aren't in squares. And it's really nice. It's a good feeling. Sandy asked me to come and share with some students the other day, and I said this is the first time in 2 years that I'm sharing with people, and I could read the room because I can't read the Zoom. it's so hard. It's so much better. It's beautiful. I actually started out as a fisherman up until I was about 20 years old in Haida Gwaii with my dad all around Prince Rupert up and down the coast, and. At about 20, my father said, "You need to do something else. That's not going to work. The industry is falling. Go to school. Go do something." So I went to Melsapina and became a chef, and I did that for quite a few years. And that's actually how I ended up in Victoria. And then after a while, I decided that I wanted to do something else. And I came to Camosun, and I graduated back in 1985 in Campbell River. And so, yeah, I got the blanket and I got everything, and I thought, you know, I graduated grade 12, but apparently there's lesser classes that you can take, and they don't give you marks for socializing. So when I decided to come to Camosun, probably about 1990, I did an assessment and I scored about a grade 9. And then so I had to go back, and I was really resenting that, but I ended up going to Sartlip, and it was so welcoming, and it was so beautiful, and all the lots of older students like myself, and I just really enjoyed that. And I went through that, and then I went through the NITA program, Native Teaching Program. And again, that's where I met Sandy, and it was just so nice to be around Indigenous people that were all trying to do the same thing, and they all had their own little struggles, and at the same time we could start to feel what we're good at, and actually that our culture was something that could be helpful. And as a learning about neuropsychology, there's a pathway called the ventral tegmental, which is the pathway of joy. And every Indigenous person I met had that pathway where I was joking. Excuse me, I'm no, I was kidding. Okay, I'm almost done here. So that was so important to have that, because it buffers difficult times, it buffers trauma. I work with lots of little Indigenous kids in Alberta, and that's the biggest thing, is trying to create that pathway for people. So I learned that at Camosun. I learned that with so many people. I went to so many, was on boards with Jenna, Janice and Nella, and many Indigenous people in the city. And that helped me so much. And now actually it kind of ruined me, because I go into other boards and I'm going, oh, we just got to get going. We got to, because everybody, like Charlene was sharing that, we got things done, and we moved, and we all and we used prayer, and we used culture, and we used things that were common amongst us, and also we were forward thinking, and that's what kind of got me to where I'm at today. So, time to stop now. So anyway,
to Karen, and Karen Riley is from Sqตั๋lewen territory, born in Lillooet, raised in Kamloops. She's an alumni of the nursing program at Camosun, and so highly skilled. You can't walk up to her and ask for a free consultation. So take her away, Karen. What did you learn when you were at Camosun?
Or maybe you can. No, I'm just kidding. Hi, everybody. My name is Karen Riley. I moved to Victoria in 2006 after being accepted to the nursing program. I think it was like one of the most difficult decisions I ever made, because I was moving away from my home, my family, everything that was comfortable, and just packing up and leaving and starting new somewhere else where you don't know anyone at all. It was very difficult. But I started my first 2 years at Camosun College, and I met a nurse and a nutritionist there who took me under their wing there and helped me to learn about culture. And I realized I didn't know a whole lot about my own culture, who I am and where I'm from. So we did a lot of teaching around the Aboriginal area here. It's like Pakwachin, Sartlip, and all the way up the island on diabetic education. And we did a lot of pit cooking and potlucks and learned about their culture. And I felt like I learned more about their culture than I knew about mine. But it really helped me to take a look at myself and who I am. And I think that really helped me in the choice of the nursing career and caring for others. So once I was in my second year of nursing, I took one of the placements that I got was on a cancer unit. And I realized that I actually really enjoyed this area of nursing. So I ended up with an undergrad position for the Royal Jubilee Hospital Oncology Department, and I've been there for 13 years, caring for people with cancer, helping them through the toughest times of their lives and, their families. And I feel like learning about how other people's cultures are really helps me with that. I learned all the way up the island who these people are, what their beliefs are, and I brought that into my nursing to help understand them, where they're at, what they're going through, and I brought some of that back to my home. And my late grandfather, Desmond Peters, told me that if I learn this education, this knowledge around medicine, I should be learning my own. So that's something I plan to do in the future. And I am very thankful for Sandy for inviting me here, and for the elders and what a beautiful place here this is. And I plan to continue teaching other nursing students, and I've been doing that all the way through. I like to give the knowledge that I've learned from many amazing nurses and other healthcare workers and pass it forward to the younger generations. And I think that I will probably one day choose a different area in nursing, but for now I will stick with the cancer patients because it's what I love to do. I like to be there for them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Wow, so many accomplishments with this, this small group of people that are up here. It's very actually intimidating because I think my only accomplishment was like playing cowbell in a heavy metal rock band. They were called Apathy. And nobody cared. So this next young man to my left here, he's a good friend of mine, Mr. Bradley Dick. Well-known artist, well-known in a lot of areas. He currently works for the government, and he's just a general, all-around, really positive guy who's really into his culture. And I'll let Brad do the talking.
Thanks, Art. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen, Naquilia, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen, Saulteau, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen, Nishjalacha, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen, Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. So good day, my family, and good day, my friends. I thank my family for opening us in such a beautiful way. Feel blessed to be able to share space with family when at events, and the reason being is that that's where another line of my education comes from, is from those elders and leads within my family. I attended Camosun, I believe, 2002 to 2004, and was in the First Nations community studies.
Doesn't remember the year
I
either.
hit 50. Memory stuff is happening. And I came as a quote unquote mature student into Camosun College, and had left my career, my first career job, I would say, with Nella Nelson in School District 61, where I worked as a First Nations arts and culture specialist. I felt not only grounded in much of the work and experience that I had gained already, but also I realized that as I entered into Camosun, that much of that experience and understanding was applicable to my learning experience as well too. And I think for myself, when I think about one of the things that I learned most about Camosun was that single parents are amazing that attend post-secondary institutions. It blew me away that these single parents, with one or 3 kids, were tackling the levity of pursuing their education as well, and the time commitment around that too. So just that balance was phenomenal. And the other was family and friends that were away from home, and the importance of creating community within an urban setting. Just recognizing that I have all the privileges, 5 minutes anywhere I go in Victoria, I have a shoulder to cry on. And that wasn't the case for many of my family that have traveled to do their education. And that's a contemporary conundrum for Indigenous people, for sure. One of the things that, I don't know if it was a learning, but it was more of a reaffirming that I could be unapologetically Indigenous within the education system as well too. That my Lekwungen, Dididat, and Kwakwakiwak ancestry are just as equal in any aspect of my education and my learning. And how do I apply that to the way that I learn? as at times we know that in that experience we're unlearning stuff as well too. And I attribute much of the discipline, the commitment and discipline, and teachings that I learned from my peers within the school. But I also learned that the profs like to be harassed from about 5 to 10 p.m. where I would go and sit and talk with them for hours on end. And and Janice, I'm sure, can attest, because it was probably every 2 weeks, her and I. But the flexibility was there. The curiosity was there. You know, I don't think I would be where I am today without the experiences I had at Camosun, the friends that I made there, the influence that they had on my life, and you know, the ability to reaffirm who we are in contemporary society was probably one of the most important things for me. And that's something that echoes throughout my career and, you know, each job that I've had since then. And it, you know, it created a whole new focus around what the importance of child welfare practice as Indigenous family and community is. And I'm also very honored to share this space with each of my family and friends here. That, you know, just hearing your words, you know, is that continued inspiration and continued acknowledgement that we as Indigenous family and community are doing great things. Because all too often in the media, we're an issue, we're, you know, we're something else. Oh, that was a quote from social media. It's like, you're something else. But, you know, but to be able to start from a place where we're perpetuating the goodness of who we are is important as well, too. So I thank Camosun for that opportunity. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen.
It's Eyēʔ Check. Oh, all right. I think I'm losing juice here. Okay, there, it's back on. All right. How you all doing? You all doing okay still? Because we got one more round of this after our final speakers on this, and there's one more question to go around. So, Jenna Bailey, Métis Cree, is the acting team leader for the Guardianship and Permanency Planning Program surrounded by Cedar Child and Family Services. She started out at Camosun, I think, in political sciences. She heard about Donald Trump and then became a social worker. Okay, Jenna. What did you learn?
Tansei, Nawehun, Jenna Bailey, Nia, Nihiao, Métis. Hello everyone, my name is Jenna Bailey. I'm Métis Cree on my dad's side and mixed European on my mom's side. My Métis family comes from the Fort Qu'Appelle Valley in Saskatchewan. My grandma was born in Lebret. My immediate family on my father's side was mostly born and raised in Prince Rupert. So yeah, similarly to what everyone's been sharing, such a gracious guest to the Lekwungen territory. I'm grateful every day that I get to be here, work here, play here, raise my family here. And I'm also just incredibly humbled to sit here with these incredible mentors. You know, Eddie and I sitting here, we're the babies. We're the babies of the of the Camosun alumni. And I attended Camosun in 2009 and 2010. Similar journey in that after I graduated high school, I went to do college in Toronto in a performing arts background. So I did that, and then thought that I didn't want to do that anymore, and so I returned back to where I was born and raised here in Victoria, and I was really lost at a place of, you know, rediscovery, trying to figure out where I wanted to go next. Never, ever, ever thought that post-secondary education was in my future. It wasn't encouraged in my family. at that point in time. And I thought, you know, maybe I can give it a go. And I went and I spoke to one of the advisors just at the main campus at Lansdowne there. And she said, you know, you meet the requirements, you know, you should go. And so I did. And having a sort of internal sense of social justice and feeling strongly about supporting people who were potentially less fortunate than myself. I felt a calling towards political science at that time. And it was very soon in my first semester at Camosun where someone found out I was Indigenous somehow. And I got hooked in. Todd Ormiston, I met with him, and I think how it happened was maybe through Faye, in that I was interested in taking a course, and it somehow just like all really just happened very fast. And all of a sudden my entire 2 years at Camosun was structured in all Indigenous courses. However, I was in the university transfer program. And you know, what I learned there and that I carry every day in my work is a foundation of strength and capacity. I learned what I was capable of that I didn't know at the time, and you know, walking and being exposed to all these, you know, amazing people at Camosun through events, through feasts like last night, the strong leadership that I witnessed and continue to witness, particularly from my Indigenous sisters, has brought me to where I am today. So thank you.
Thank you. This next gentleman, his name is Eddie Charlie. I believe I met him in a sweat lodge, so the next time I saw him downtown, I didn't recognize him because we both had clothes on.
He's a bully.
He's from the Cowichan, and he was at Camosun. He enrolled in 2011 in the Indigenous Family Support Program, and later continued into the Indigenous Studies program and graduated in 2016. And Kristen Spray, sitting beside him, is going to help him, and you'll know why in a minute. If you don't know Eddie already, here's Eddie Charlie.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me here today. I want to thank our elders here, Victor Underwood, Skip Dick, May Sam, and John Elliott, for helping us feel welcome and feel safe to be here today. It's always an honor to be in your presence. So thank you very much for allowing us to be in your circle and for sharing it. And hi, everybody. My name is Eddie. I come from a town that's born out of desperation, of alcoholism, violence, and a people without identity because of their experience with residential school. People that have experienced residential school lost so much, but the most important thing is identity, and they pass that on to intergenerational family members. And we're watching our children, our grandchildren, and their children come out and not have an identity. Now, when I came here to Camosun College, I felt intimidated, and I felt overwhelmed, and I didn't feel like I had a place here. Some of the staff here made me feel like this is your home now. This is where you're going to create your new identity. And I walked around on the campus, and I learned how to embrace the people in the Camosun College, the staff, but more importantly for me, were the students. Every single student that walked through these doors helped us create identity, find the courage to create hope for ourselves and for the people that are walking in behind us. And that gave me hope, and it gave me courage, and it inspired me. And without these students, I would not have had that chance to create identity that was ripped away from me when I was a tiny little boy. And I'll always be grateful to every single student who walked through these doors and walked on the same path with me. And I'll be grateful to the staff that said, this is your new home now. And I will always remember that. Thank you very much.
Hi, hi, hi.
It's an honor.
Thank you very much, Eddie. Thank you for your courage and inspiration. Why don't you stretch a little? Raise your hands, give them a shake. Shake your booties if you have to. Because we're going on to phase 2, and our time is limited. So, in this phase, we're going to go again. This time I don't need to introduce everybody, because you all know them now. And hopefully you're all getting to know one another out there. Welcome again out in Zoom land. So in this second part, the question is, what kind of work or other contributions have you been involved in since you left Camosun? And you know, somebody like John, he's going to probably need more than 5 minutes just to explain half of what he does. If he's like me, he probably works through some weekends and a lot of evenings. So, John, take her away, sir.
All right, thank you very much. You know, I didn't mention earlier that when I was at Camosun College, I was taking fine arts and photography. That's what I enjoyed. I just loved the smell of that room, you know, the smell of an art room, and that's what kind of got me in the door. But I really enjoyed that part of my life. It was a lot of fun. But it led me down a long, long path to where I am today. And the work that I've done, I really enjoyed working with arts and photography, and learned how to paint and draw and those things that we were doing back then. But you know, my main work in life in the last about 42 years, I suppose, has been language preservation, working with our language, the Saulteau language here, and with the Saanich. Used to be called Saanich Indian School Board, then Saanich School Board now, and with University of Victoria and Camosun College. And then at Camosun College I taught a course called Land and the Language, how our language connects us to our homelands and territories. And I really, really enjoyed working with the staff here at Camosun College, you know, and Corinne Michelle and Janice Simcoe, Todd Ormison, and all the other ones we came to know, like Faye and Ruth and those other ones that work here at Camosun College. It's been a really, really good time, and have a lot of respect for all the work you're doing with our people and helping them to find their path. I remember those days when I used to drive some of my friends around Victoria that weren't from here, looking for a place to rent. And it was pretty hard getting a place to rent, because they'd say their place was open for renting, but when they see your faces, no, we already filled it. So we go to another one and another one, you know, and so it was difficult those days, and being a student and a First Nations person in a town like that. But you know, I got a lot of determination from my late father. About our identity, who we are, where we're from. He spoke about it all the time. And, you know, he realized that loss of language was huge for our people. You know, and I remember the Institute of Adult Studies where we went, just the word institute to us was a kind of frightening thing to us. Because of our experiences of a residential school like Eddie was talking about, that our families went through back then. So no, we were a little bit afraid and intimidated by being in a situation like that. And I'm really glad that things have changed to have that acceptance to be drummed in today, and hear the prayer from our beautiful elders and the beautiful welcome to this place of education here now, and it's a good feeling. It makes you feel like that acceptance that we should have always had as a people. But my main work is in language, and I started out with 18 fluent speakers, and that were the first language speakers of our St. Jonathan area. And when I was at my first part of Camosun College, I was Philip Paul was the one of the first directors for looking after the First Nations business there, along with Skip Dick. And they were good leaders, and they were good examples for us to see how well they worked there and how well they were accepted there. And so we went on to, from there we went into protest years and things like that. We protested a lot of the things that were happening to our First Nations people, you know. Back then we blockaded roads, occupied Department of Affairs and such things like that. They threw us into jail because we were standing up for our rights, because back then we were fighting the white paper policy. They were trying to assimilate us into the Canadian society back then through all of that. So those are years we were living through then. And the other thing was that I was going to school with my mate at that time, and we'd been living together for 3 years. We were really in love with one another, and she passed away that year. So it was a hard time. And I was in search of myself for a while. I kind of staggered around for the first couple of weeks just drunk, because I didn't know how to find my way to my own balance again. And then my elder said, you know, you have to do something more with your life than this if you want to remember your mate in a good way, do something good with your life. Then I got called, because I wanted to be an artist, and then I got called into the language area with my father and my sister and the elders there, and by Philip Paul, and they put me in there, and they said, these are your professors here. They fixed up an old school building and made it really comfortable and nice for them, and he said, these are your professors. You go and learn what you can from our professors here about who we are, and learn what you can. So that's what we did, and I was lucky to be in that position. And I was lucky to have beautiful, beautiful old elders that were determined people. Some of them went off to boarding school, and some of them didn't. And they were strong about keeping the language, keep the identity, keeping the knowledge of this homeland and territory. And I learned so much from those beautiful old elders, and what it means to have the language within you, embedded in your heart and your mind, and you feel so attached to this land and territory as a Huilingok person, and understand what it means to be Hushanich. And so that's what I grew to learn more and more. They stuck me into the classes, and I taught all grades from nursery school to grade 10 throughout the years, and then they put me into finally nowadays I ended up doing just teaching adults, because we gained enough of our language after. I think I worked with late Earl Claxton for 28 years, and other elders, and got to know the language well enough to be fluent enough in it and speak about anything in our language. And along the way I found prayer, and for many years I carried a sweat lodge. I think I ran a sweat lodge for 28 years or so. And I find that part is keeps me balanced in my own mind and my own visit to this world. And my late mother used to tell us, remember when days get hard, your prayer is your cane in life. Your cane in life is your prayer when things get really tough. So that's a good message for those ones that are struggling in your classes, or that, because they're trying to find their balance. They're trying to find their true path. And I've been very blessed to be able to have the language in my heart and my mind now. And now I just teachers that I teach the young people that are going to be teachers, and I'm still teaching. I do twice a week now, but just Mondays and Wednesdays, and the rest of the time we're interpreting stories and still working on a lot of the archived information that our elders left behind that they wanted us to learn. So We're doing right now we're doing a book on the root word system of our language, so that it will be a good resource for the new teachers coming on. That's all I'll say for now. So you have any challenge? Then the whiteness going to school out, this 8 that took contact in the Elliott.
So it is a bit of an awkward question, that one, isn't it? Like we're not going to stand up and a 13-page resume falls down to the concrete here. For us, it's more important about like what kind of relationship did you build with your community using your accomplishments. So feel free to answer this question in whatever way seems fit. So we'll move on to Nella.
Honored to sit here with John and just realize we quickly reminisce, and whenever we see each other, we're just so happy to see each other. And I always like to share a few ghost stories to keep him on his toes whenever we get together anywhere. But yeah, I think when I think about Camosun, and when John brought up about the racism, I'm really proud to say I grew up on a commercial fish boat. That's how I earned my money to go to college and university. I like long nails even then, so I had to often trim them behind the fish scales and the guck. But the reality was it really taught me a lot, because we used to finish our semesters at school here, and then we'd pack up and move to Alert Bay and fish all summer, and then we'd come back and try to look for a place. And so what I learned through that protest years and racism and discrimination was brutal. And I didn't drink in my life. I'm not in this sense because of what I witnessed. I kind of went the other stream because it was pretty intense. And so when we would go look for places, that was their judgment on us, right? Drunken, dirty, lazy. But it ended up, we were able to fight that, and Alec and I ended up with the human rights, and we went to the Supreme Court of Canada to fight our case in racism, and we won and set the precedent for vicarious liability. But one of the things that I always thought about in relation to Camosun is I've always stayed really close to the pathway, because I know what Camosun meant for the 34 children that we've raised. Many of them went through Camosun. But more importantly, I knew it was the springboard, like, to get us moving and mobilized. And so I've always stayed attached to Camosun. Philip Paul, when we had our community meetings, he was there. I used to do guest speaking with him. I loved to sit beside him, and he had a great sense of humor. But that when the first advisory council for Camosun was formed, Philip was there, and he was part of it, and then he passed, and that was really hard. But I remember just like, no, just hang in there, and I'll just keep on going. And so just any way I felt I could offer support, even got sucked into being on the board of governors. And now that's a different ball game, because, you know, being on the board of governors, you got the Robert's Rules of Orders and all, which in our meetings are a tad different. And so it was really, and then I ended up being the head of policy, and I'm like, policy. So, you know, there was some learning experience, but it was all about trying to make change for our people. I never lost sight. And my father, my parents have been the most amazing teachers of staying connected. And being on the council at Camosun, and then being in work in the district and volunteering on boards, sometimes our courses had to be revamped. Sometimes they had to be changed with the current times. And it was always good to be involved in even that aspect of how do we rewrite a course? How do we provide our input for the rewrite? But never losing sight of the fact that we need to support our people. And in our language, it's called klimka, if you think you're better than anyone else, and that's never a message that I was taught. I have to share the story because it's guided me in all of the work. Is my dad one day, he said to me, I was talking about leadership, and it's not always been a great time. Our canoe got really wobbly sometimes, and we spun around in those whirlpools. And I remember my dad, it was a shag carpet, and my dad took this piece of string and he put it on the floor, and he goes, you know what? He said, see the string, and if you push it from behind, he said, what happens to the string? And it just gets all kind of out of shape. And then he took the string and he went like this. And he says, what happens when you walk with your people? As things happen and things move. And I went to my dad, and he goes, you know what? I don't even remember saying that to you. And I said, Dad, you did that. It was on that old white creamy shag carpet you had. And I said, it imprinted in my mind, always, your work is to give back to community, your work is to be involved, and yumayasla. Everything you do is yumayasla, you respect what people are doing. And I think for me, Camosun is near and dear to my heart, and I continue to be involved in any of my kids or nephews. I say, you need to go to Camosun to springboard into UVic. And one of my nieces springboard right into UVic, and she goes, you know what, Auntie? Ariel goes, I wish I had gone to Camosun. And I said, I wish you had too, gone, because it would have been, your experience would have been different, because your canoe, you would have been traveling, you'd have been ready to make the transition. But I think, as John has talked about with language, and as I work through learning language and teaching Kasalas and Eyēʔ being fluent, it's a journey. But the words that we use in our language cannot be interpreted in English. And I, even just the other day, as I closed down my conversation, I'm going to stick to the vibe, is one of the words, even saying the word halakisla. And then my nieces and we're talking about, we're saying good, you're taking my breath that I'm speaking with, and you're leaving with it, but we're not saying goodbye. So again, it's always remembering the power is within, and if we continue to do that, and like I say, I'm just really honored and continue to say, number one, and we built it into the courses, the teaching of being of service to your people. And I remember we had a discussion, I said, I'm really worried about some of the new generation coming. Where's the volunteers that are sitting in our boards and community? We need to build it into the courses that they have to do some practicum or go out into community. And thank you, Charlene, for reminding us. We don't sit on boards or committees that don't move. You need to get in the canoe and you need to start to paddle. You don't sit in slack tide. Forget it. You move. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen.
Speaking of racism, I remember we all had to learn to start sounding white. We dropped our accents whenever we wanted to, like, book a motel. Yeah, have you got any vacancy there? Yeah, for sure, when you show up there. No, we don't actually. All right, Kathy Charles Wary, do us proud.
Miigwech. When I left Camosun, I'd sort of planned to go on and get my degree, which I never saw university in my future, but by the time I was leaving Camosun, it seemed like a very real possibility. My nation was being very supportive as well, which also helped. And I wanted to teach, because I'd had such a good experience of finding my voice, finding my strength, feeling like what I wanted to do mattered. I wanted to share that with others, so I thought teaching would be the way to do that, because that's where I'd experienced. By the time I got to UVic, I was going to go to Institute of American Indian Art in Santa Fe, but life had other plans for me. I was adjusting to being a single parent, and I needed to earn a living to support my son and myself. Didn't want to go back to being a bike courier, which is what I was doing before Camosun. And so I went to Open Space Gallery in downtown Victoria and asked if I could get some funding. Could I do on-the-job training? Like, we didn't even call it an internship. It was on-the-job training. And so I applied to, at the time, Canadian Native Arts Foundation, which became Aboriginal Achievement Foundation, which became Inspire. And I got a grant from them. I worked on the application with the director at Open Space, and I worked there for a year. And I curated an exhibition. And I saw, it was a way of sort of demystifying the gallery system and the art world a little bit, to see, how could opportunities be created there? Because even at that time, there were very few exhibitions of Indigenous art in public gallery spaces. It was, seen as, craft or all historical, not understood. So I ended up sort of delving into that world. And I curated an exhibition of like very political work. There was 4 artists in the show, and it was very outspoken. It was the first time anything like that had been seen in Victoria. They had a huge response from the public, lots of attention for the exhibition. Students came from UVic to, have tours and discuss the issues that were being addressed in these artworks. Zachary Longboy, Lawrence Paul Yaquillipton, Teresa Marshall had this big Monopoly game that was all about disconnecting us from our lands and resource extraction, and this was in '94. Just as that was finishing up, and I didn't know what I was going to do for work, I heard about an opportunity at BC Arts Council. They were looking for an Indigenous person to manage a relatively new grant program that they had introduced at the recommendation of a group of Indigenous arts leaders that had been convened to look at their programs and figure out, what wasn't working, how could they do better. So I got to go in and work on managing the files that had already been received and facilitating the decision-making process. So I started learning about that whole world, the grant-making world. And at the same time, I did some contract work at First Peoples Cultural Council. I had the amazing opportunity of going and teaching at the Anaukin Center in Penticton, which is an Indigenous fine arts school. I taught there for a couple months, filling in for someone, which was like a dream. All Indigenous students, Indigenous post-secondary institution, teaching studio arts. So I feel like, once you get on a path that fits with your sole purpose in life, like you find avenues that kind of lay down in front of you. And if you notice, if you're paying attention and you have courage to take risks, opportunities present themselves. So I never say I was lucky. I always say I was fortunate, because I know that I worked very hard. I place a lot of value in working in a very ethical, clean way, being honest, being kind. Those values mean a lot to me in my work. And for the last 25 years, I've worked for First Peoples Cultural Council. I was the founding arts program manager, and I shepherded into that organization that grant program that I managed at BC Arts Council during that 10-week contract. So I was kind of in the right place at the right time. I'd worked for both organizations. This shift was happening. And I, over the years, generated a lot of funding. I did a lot of advocacy for Indigenous arts, especially in British Columbia, but also on a national level. From one program of arts funding, we now have 5 grant programs plus a whole suite of music programs that I got money for just a few years ago. So I've raised a lot of money, done a lot of advocacy, sat at a lot of tables, and so that ability to work with people that you don't always agree with has really served me well. I've had to be very outspoken and assertive, but also very diplomatic, and it's a really valuable skill to have. And it's actually part of, I'm Deer Clan, Wawashkishi, and that's one of our responsibilities is negotiation and diplomacy. I taught at Camosun for a while, which was really wonderful. I think 2000, maybe 1, 2, 3, I taught an art, historical and contemporary art survey course to the community, what's it called again? The First Nations Community Studies program. Very hard work. Being a teacher is a lot of work. You spend a lot of time preparing, readings. And this was before you could grab images off the internet, right? So I was like in the, taking photographs out of books and making slides. It was like pre-digital easy stuff. Finding readings written by Indigenous arts thinkers and artists. Lots of marking. I'm sort of a natural editor, so all the writing that I'd get from students, I had to edit everything, because I think learning to write well is an amazing tool, maybe even a weapon. One of my favorite poets edited a book called Reinventing the Enemy's Language. And I think if you can learn to write well, it's really powerful. So I feel like I've worked with so many amazing people over the years, delivering the grant programs. We do a lot of community development, so a lot of professional practices, workshops for artists out in communities, some strategic initiatives. I led the creation of a First Peoples Arts Map, which is now part of First Peoples Map of BC. You can check it out online. Did some work around cultural protocols in the arts. Feel really blessed, all the work that I've been able to do, and now I'm turning my attention towards my own learning. I've been taking language classes, Anishinaabe classes, working on that more, and thinking about becoming an older person and how to do that well for my family and my community. Miigwech. Nakani ganai.
Wow. I didn't know there was a way to get old well. I guess I better visit Kathy. Okay, Dano.
Thank you. When I left Camosun, I got a job at the Victoria Native Friendship Center as a drop-in coordinator, and when Alex was the ED there, but more importantly it gave me the first-hand account of learning what humility really is and integrity, because street people, homeless people, families on welfare that lived in the cities and on the local reservations all came to the drop-in center to play games. And there was a lot of trust and respect, and there was a lot of sadness as well. But the parents of all these children that were with them, they would do everything for them. The older people that were on the streets, I mean, that wasn't as many, but they came in and they enjoyed the soup kitchens. And then you'd learn where they were from. I remember one was from Housekeeping. A fella, Vern, was up from my territory in Penelakut. And I'm still friends with some of the ones that were to this day. And to understand the challenges, but to give everything that you have in friendship, love, caring, during those times taught me, was the most important lesson I could ever learn, by sitting with them and them being so thankful of borrowing $2 for milk for their kids or food. Then when SA Day came, they would either buy you pizza or pay it back. And that's what integrity and respect is. And we can't forget where we come from, who we are, but that mutual respect was what I've learned, to be humble in everything I do, to the best of my ability. If I got gifts, I use them, but I remember where I come from, and it's humbling. And to be honest and to walk with that in life. And the Friendship Center is where I sobered up. And I use those strengths from those days, from the schooling, from being away from home, but knowing that my family's proud of me, my late parents. And my mom went to residential school, and she was, I don't know how, she was still fluent in Saulteau and Housekeeping. And you guys knew my mom, Mary Sampson Thorne. And my father was a hunter and a fisherman, and he always shared with his family and with us. They always made sure we were okay. That's where I got my teachings from, my Eyēʔ. And ultimately, being in a sober lifestyle, I learned how to not make excuses anymore and to get the job done. And working in sports was my call. And when I was hired, I went out that weekend and prayed to the Creator that that's my call. And I've always been very serious about wherever I've worked, whoever I work with, that has to be our path, is for our youth to keep them alive. And I've been very fortunate to work in a holistic development environment, which I created in my life, that teaches me to worry about myself first and then family and everyone else. And I'll share a bit more later of working for free, like me and Alex did. And I learned how to use the people to empower our way of life, our traditional territories, our language, and our culture. And I've traveled all over this country and across North America and around the world. And my first question, whose territory am I in? I pay the respects, and they dictate wherever I've been. Not Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen, CM Suli, the spirit as one is so important. Stilikas Manam Shwatlakwa, our families, our youth and our children, our Chacha Manam, are sacred. I've been taught that. And going to school from home taught me how to search out native and non-native, and that there's big hearts there from both of us, and that we can overcome and work together. So I always think of the past for the future, and for the now is to make every day special. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen.
Thank you, Dano. While that microphone is being wiped off, COVID protocols are in place here. Everybody's pretty good on the microphone. I didn't have to give any instructions because I was emceeing at a, big fat Indian wedding once. And I handed the mic to this elder. It was during the meal, and she thought it was the pepper. Okay, Charlene, what have you done since those early days?
When I was at Camosun, I was always really interested in criminology. Oh, I love criminology. But when I found out it didn't transfer to UVic, I was so brokenhearted. But Creator had something in store for me, I must say, yes. So I feel like I've gone full circle. Being born into trauma, being born into family violence and alcoholism, and just survive through your childhood. Like I said earlier, I dropped out in grade 8. I don't have that experience of high school or even grade 8 and up. I envy the ones that graduate. I'm so proud of my grandchildren that have graduated so far. And I'm trying to get them to Camosun, Janice. I got 2. So one of my big teachers was my late husband, Art. Art went through one hell of a journey, I must say. He went to court twice, brought his abuser to court, and he won with 17 other victims. I was just going on that journey with him. It was so empowering, it was so crazy, and it was so emotional. But the success of him winning and his main theme, or his main idea of everything, the outcome was, Char, I want the history told. Because back then, nobody talked about it. If they did, nobody believed us. Our people believed us. But nobody, non-native people, oh yeah, hogwash, that happened. Well, you should have seen what happened in our institutions in Europe. comparison. No, that's not right. It was really hard going through all that with Art. He ended up taking Canada to court and won as well. And I know a few of his friends from Victoria were with us in the courtroom. It just feels like a lifetime ago. He's been gone 19 years now, almost. He taught me so much. He was my biggest supporter, especially with school. Janice was another one. And my sister Charlotte Cote, she encouraged me all the time. I really look up to her, to how far she's come. And she always says, anybody can do it. But my worst enemy was my fear. And Art always, I can still hear him saying, Char, what you fear, you create. Oh my, stop it. And he's so true. It's so true. You create your own fear. So when I left Camosun, after working there as an education advisor, I went to UVic to carry on with my master's degree in social policy and practice. I completed all the course material and then found out Art had cancer and he was terminal. So I quit. I didn't do my thesis and I went on to look after him until he passed in our home in 2003. Whew, John, when you said your wife passed, I tell you, I wasn't as strong as you. I always remember those days. They were hard, I swear. I was intoxicated for 6 months. There was a team that came by, and I can't remember all of them, but I sure remember Nella. They brought me flowers, they brought me books, they brought me anything to help me through my grieving. And I'll never forget that day. And that's the day I changed. That's the day I said, no more to this alcohol. I need to go on. My husband needs to be proud of what he wanted me to become and what I need to become. It was a journey, I tell you. And that book you gave me helped me. And I passed it on to other widows. I bought the book and passed it on. Yeah, it helped me. I read a page every day and cried and released, and that was part of my journey. It was, and it's all part of what I do today. Intergenerational effects from residential school is so crazy. We're getting somewhere. And I look at why am I in social work? I never wanted to be a social worker because I was one of those ones that condemned it. I looked down on it. You know, how can you remove our children? But I'm really happy to say I work for a really good organization in Port Alberni, ESMA, Family and Child Services. We've got great teams. I'm in the resource department. I was in a couple of other departments and kind of wore me down. So I thought I could make a difference in resources. And I feel like I have. I'm very proud to say that our agency, I know Child and Family Services is compared to the new residential school. I must say, our organization, it's like we're hardly looking for homes anymore because immediately children, if there's something going on, it's not considered like a removal. We are taking you and bringing you over to auntie's, uncle's, grandma, grandpa's house. And that's the world of difference. And that's why I stay. I stay because the passion is there. My colleagues, they're amazing. They're all on the same journey, you know. We all want to make a difference to these little kids. You know, it's not their fault, you know, that they have parents that are addicted or they can't look after their children. Our goal is to have all New Chawnoth homes for our New Chawnoth children. That's our goal. It's going to happen. I promise you that. While I'm there, it's going to happen. We have a prevention team now, which we never ever had before, which was about, oh my goodness, I'm so bad at it. Probably about 3 years, maybe longer. but we've got navigation workers working with our youth on the street. We have an outreach worker. We have cultural workers, wellness workers. We have elders that there's a new project I'm doing where I'm going to the caregivers' home now, and we're bringing teachers into the home. There's no excuses why you shouldn't know where these children come from. You know, what band are they from? What nation are they from? We should all know that. You're looking after our new children. So now we're going into the home, and it's just a new project, and we're just starting it. I feel like if you are going to be looking after our children, you need to know part of our culture, you need to engage with it, you need to sit down and practice it with them. It could be from making a shawl, to weaving, to talking about maybe residential school history. I want you to understand why our people are the way they are, because that was my thing growing up. Why is Grandpa not teaching me my language? Why does my stepdad beat the hell out of my mother? What is going on here? You know, why do people get angry? I remember Art getting mad at my daughter for eating corn nuts in the car when we were traveling back from Port Alberni. Like, what the hell is your problem? I couldn't believe how angry he got. But when he was in treatment, he phoned and apologized to my girl and said, you know, those corn nuts triggered me. I know what a trigger is today. It triggered me. It smelled like my abuser's socks. So for us, those are the kind of things our people need to understand. They need to understand what happened to our parents and grandparents in those schools. Today, I promise my late husband, we're going to continue on with his story because it's so important. He said, our history needs to be in those books, Char. It needs to keep going. We need to keep talking about it. Don't ever stop talking about what happened to us. No matter how hard and how awful it is to hear those stories, those are real. Those are our stories. They need to understand us. They need to understand why we're not hugging the kids. Why we get, you know, so triggered so easy. You know, one of my good friends here in town said, when I was interviewing her years ago for a paper at UVic, she said she couldn't believe how many shoes she had. Because why? She had to wear shoes how many sizes too bigger, you know, for her. And she was addicted to buying shoes. Well, my late husband, when he passed away, he had so much clothes in the closet that still had the tags on them. I couldn't believe it. So my journey really stems from my relationship with art, my marriage to art, his experience in residential school, because I didn't go to a residential school, neither did my mom. So I didn't know that. I didn't understand it. But boy, oh boy, through my whole life, I've tried to understand it. I do today. And like I said, full circle. And working at USMA, we are making a difference. And I'm really proud of our organization. We have a good director. We have great team leaders. And everybody's on board. You know, everybody wants to make that difference with the kids. And yeah, what else have I done? Yeah, that's about it. True?
True. Okay, brother, tell us what you've been up to. And have you been, do you still dabble in chefery? I want to know that too.
Like my late relative, Ernie Collison, used to say, I still have a washboard stomach, I just have a load of laundry in front of it. So yes, I do dabble in food still. I love food. And COVID's not my friend. Yeah. Clicko. For just that whole memory lane for me, all the stuff, all the people here, all the things going through my mind, and I'm just trying to practice what I preach and stay in that range of resilience and that kind of ebbs and flows in our body, what happens when we hear about stuff. And this is the stuff that we can use to help us balance. And I know with my children, I worked really hard because I didn't know stuff. My mom was a residential school survivor of Alert Bay, and during their time was a little bit different for the northern ones because it was up to the parents to come and get them at Christmas. It was up to the parents to come and get them at summer break. And because our community was so far away and impoverished, and my grandparents were in a heavy addictions because they took their kids, so they had to resource with something, they never came and got them. And my mother, it was hard when she told us the first Christmas, they put all these kids in clumps, 2 different clumps, and the ones that got presents, they had one clump and they gave them all their presents, and the ones that didn't get presents, they left there and they got to watch the other kids open presents, and they never even gave them nothing. She told me that, and that was when it really hit for me, that, wow, this is like a lot. And when I was at Camosun College, I did a lot of studies, and I do papers on residential schools, and then I realized, why don't I do a little bit easier? Something a little bit easier, like, I don't know, anything. And so I started to do that. I stopped biting off more than I could chew, and I started to learn that. And so the last, when I left Camosun College, I actually had a catering company. My partner, Carrie Pollard, and I had a catering company, and she kept it running while I went to school, and I went back and helped for a year. And then my nephew came from Vancouver to live with us, and I realized that, no pun, but the catering company was feast or famine. So during the summer time, we'd make good money, and in the winter time, we'd have bits and pieces, and it wasn't enough. So I went to school. I went to look for a job, and it was really funny because I saw Janice at Hillside, and she was, I think, Janice was leaving the food fair with Sandy, and it was funny. I could hear under her breath, "Oh, Frank could fill that position." And I didn't know what she was talking about. And then all of a sudden, yeah. So I went and interviewed, and away I went for about a year. And I learned so much. Like I said, I learned so much about what was going on for students and what I could do. And I learned a funny thing called boundaries. I didn't know boundaries, so because I was brought up in a small community net, so I had some students that they didn't have a home for a little while, so they're staying at my house on the couch for a while. Janice says, "You might not want to do that." So I said, okay. So I started helping students in other ways. And then after I did leave, because I was here with the Salish and the Nuchanuth and the Kwagith people, I learned so much, and I was in ceremonies and one day I thought, I got to go home. It was like this pull to go to Haida Gwaii. I left when I was 16, and I went back when I was 30. And when I went back, I just was so excited about a lot of stuff, and I didn't know about this word, intergenerational trauma. So I kind of came in like the wind, and I was doing all this stuff, and after 3 years, I kind of limped out of there with my life. And I didn't understand. And I went to Edmonton, because I didn't want to go where I knew people. I needed to really do some deep work. So I went to Edmonton, and I met some elders out there, and I was learning about sweat lodges and sun dances and all kinds of Indigenous medicines, and I really enjoyed myself out there for quite a while. And met my wife, Doris. She was from the Dene Nation, part of a 60 scoop. And then I started to do a lot of work in the university hospital as a cultural helper, working with elders, working with families, lots of end-of-life issues, lots of just helping people coordinate in the hospital. Very intense. They had about 750 beds, probably at least 30 to 50 Indigenous people at all times from all over Alberta, some from BC, some from as far as Ontario. and I got to work with all kinds of people. And some of them were very strong traditional, some of them were very, very strong Christians. Didn't matter. I would, you know, we were taught to work with everybody equally, and I got to learn a lot. Then I started to work on different kinds of trauma. I went to every kind of counseling you can imagine, from sitting there on the couch to beating the pillow and crying in the bush, everything. I remember talking to a good friend of mine, Sid Crosby, and he said, I said, yeah, I go see this therapist. I pay him $100 an hour, and he makes me cry. And he says, oh, really? He goes, oh, just give me $20. I'll take you in a smokehouse and make you cry. So it's like, okay. So I realized maybe that wasn't working that well. And so about 15 years ago, I went to this one workshop, and it was a Canadian Foundation for Trauma Research and Education, and it was about neuropsychology, and it was about the nervous system. And they told me that it's in your nervous system. It stays in there. It's not part of your frontal lobe, and it's not what you feel or what you think, but it's what's going on in your system. And over time, if we don't discharge and move this through, then you're going to start to get sick. That's what happens. And so I really followed them, and I learned a lot, and I learned how to take care of myself differently. My work changed. And after I left the hospital, I started to work with Indigenous kids in foster care. In this moment, 71% of kids in foster care in Alberta are Indigenous. 60% of the homes that run foster care are Filipino run. And when I got in there to start to talk in these groups, they never talked about Indigenous people. And I was saying, you know, I said, I used to be a chef and a consultant. And if I went into a restaurant, I would see what my clientele was. And if 70% of my clientele was vegetarian, I would change my menu. I said, you guys are still serving meat. You got to change what you do here. And they started to change a little bit, and they started to kind of hear, you know, that we have to make, we have to understand the territory that we're in, we have to understand the peoples that we're in, and we have to understand that all these little ones, how they can template off of our system. And I learned that from Janice and Camosun College and all the people, all the different people from this territory, is that they leaded with kindness, and they leaded with humor. And even though we did difficult things, and we have residential school survivors and all these things that we're dealing with, we could still template that kindness for everyone around us. So I started to do this with these little kids, and it was so cute because some of them, I told the story in Sandy's class the other day, that this social worker needed to hear something from this child. I won't get into details, but I realized that to put her mom and her sisters outside, and this little traumatized child was so scared, and I said, that's their resource. Can we just keep them in? And then they said, no, we can't. They have to stay outside. And I said, okay. So I look around, and I'm a little bit cheeky. So I looked around, and I found some yarn. And I unrolled the yarn, and I gave it to Mom, and I gave it to a little piece of yarn to the child, and I said, we're going to talk, and I'm going to be with you, but every once in a while, if you want your mom, just pull the yarn. She goes, okay. So she's out there, and we're talking away, and every once in a while, she'd pull it, and her mom would pull it back. And the social worker would give me a dirty look, but we continued on. But again, that's what I learned how to work in trauma. It was that our culture, our songs, our prayers, all of that stuff helped to discharge trauma. It helped to keep us balanced, and then we move on again, and something difficult would happen, and then we do it again. Every one of us here, these panelists that are up here, they talk about that, how they went back, how they got over addictions, how they dealt with grief and loss, how they moved forward, and then they dreamed a year from now, what can I do? What can I do that's going to be really cool? And I keep saying that. I know that I wanted to move back here so many times, and I wanted to move back here about 12 years ago. And we actually, my wife and I, and we have 2 little boys, we sold our house. And we just had to sign off. We had 5 days to find a house in Victoria. We came here, and Sandy drove us to every corner of Victoria. And the day before we left, my wife got diagnosed with breast cancer. And we had to stop everything, stop the whole process. And it was hard. And we went through that for about 4 years. And I'd never been so alive. I was just like, go, go, go. And I was doing all this stuff. And then she got better, and then I crashed. But realizing that the Creator has a different story sometimes, a different path for us. And I just believe that. And I know that with my children, some of the stuff that I didn't learn, as I parented my children, I reparented myself. And my wife, like I said, was part of 60 Scoops. She did the same thing. And we, you know, our children are very, very healthy. Actually, too healthy. They talk back all the time, and they assert themselves. They do all this. But I know that that's part of it, just to move on and just to keep going. And that's what I've done, and I keep doing. And I come, and just like I said, all these panelists are here, just try and share a little piece of the puzzle, because all of these little pieces of the puzzle are going to help the next generations. And that's why we're here, to try and hopefully tell these stories, that you guys could take those away. Hopefully template the kindness that's in our heart, even though that sometimes it's difficult. You can do it, and you can keep going, and maybe it's not going to work out exactly the way you think, but down the road you'll never be the same. Even today, you'll never be the same, because we share and we learn and we get new things just out there. Hi, Wendy. Sorry. Wendy McDonald was, when I first started, I didn't see her up there, but she was so helpful when I first started my ABE, so thank you so much. But I'll stop now, and yeah, my Haida name is Eyēʔ Sqliwon, and my children, I wanted them to have their Haida names. And it was interesting because we come from a matriarchal system, so you have to follow your mom. So I had to get my auntie from the Raven clans to adopt my wife from the Dene Nation. And the moment that she adopted them, then my boys could get their names. And it was so cool, because we worked really hard at that with my cousin. He's a Raven chief in Masset. And then we were so thankful, and we were done. And then about 6 months later, my cousin phoned, and he says, that ceremony that you did, it was so good. He said, but now everybody's doing it. I must have had 5 or 6 people come through here and get my mom to adopt their kids. So it just kind of takes off like that. So thank you so much for this honor to share.
Thank you, Frank. And while that microphone is being taken care of, I just want to do a quick check-in with our audience members out there. How are you doing? Are you getting tired? Do you have sore bums from those concrete? Yeah. Okay. And we're supposed to have leave a little room for some interaction and some question period at the end. So if we could speed up the rest of the process so we don't lose our beautiful people out there. Okay. All right, Karen. You take it away, Karen.
Thank you, Art. Hi, everybody. So back in Kamloops there, I worked as a medical office assistant for 8 years. And I never ever thought I could attend the nursing program, because I never ever thought that I was smart enough that I could do 4 years of schooling, or, I just didn't think I could do it. So the day I decided to just go for it and apply to schooling, I applied in Kamloops and in Victoria here, and got accepted in Victoria, and moved my way over to Victoria. I told my story about my experience at Camosun College, and from beyond that, after I graduated at UVic with a Bachelor of Science degree, in 2010, I proceeded on to do a lot of teaching for nursing students. And I've been asked multiple times to become an instructor at the Camosun College and at UVic, but I declined, because for me, I find the best teaching that I do for the nursing students is at the hospital. And I like the hands-on with the nursing students, and I like the hands-on with the patients. I like to be there. I did probably about 10 years of good hard education around caring for patients and palliative care and interaction with patients, people, and learning about the culture like I talked about earlier. And I think that it takes a pretty special type of person to be sitting there with someone who's, you know, fighting their battles with cancer, and they need that somebody there to help them through what they're going through. Like, they just have, they don't think they can do it anymore, so it's up to you to sit there and be there for them and fight that battle with them from the beginning right till the end. I've sat at people's bedsides who had nobody and held their hand at the end of their life. And people need that. Like, our hospital really believes that people don't die alone. No one should be alone. So I really believe that touched my heart, and I move forward with that, and I teach that to newer nurses. And I find with my family, if there's people ill in my family, I get called upon. And I take that time, and I go be with my family, and I advocate for my family, because I find that there's a different respect when you have a nurse in the family who actually knows what's going on, and that knows that, you know, you deserve the same type of respect as everybody else. So I take it upon myself to go take that time and go be with family. And if we have Aboriginal people that come through our hospital, I'll take the time to go there and let them know that we have an Indigenous room where you can go and pray and smudge and bring your family together. And we have liaison workers and social workers for Aboriginal people out there. And I keep in touch with them to let them know that there is support, there is people there for us. And I think a really big thing for me is I'd like to see more Aboriginal nurses. I find that a lot of people start the programs and never finish because they probably think the same way I did. Like, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. But you know what, you are, and you can do it. And I say go for it. Just put your all in, just go for it. And there is supports out there. And I found different ways of studying that worked for me. And we got study groups together, and you know, you're trying to cram all of this information into your head. That's impossible. There's no way you can. So we would like use flashcards and make up games and do goofy little things, and the instructors would be listening to us giggling away while we're writing our exams. But I think that worked for us. You find what works for you, and you just push through it. And my friends that I gained through the nursing program are still my friends to this day. And when you become a nurse, you get this new family. All my nurses that I work with, they're my family. And I have family at the hospital, and I have my family in Lillooet and the Sqตั๋lewen territory where I come from, in Lillooet and Sqตั๋lewen nations. So I would be willing to go talk anywhere that it needed to be done to bring in more nurses in the Aboriginal area. And it's something that I've always said that I'd be willing to do. And I think that's just a goal that I had for the future. And there's the only other thing I would like to end with, I'm not going to talk too long, is that I'd like to say thank you for inviting me to be here. It's a huge honor to be here for the 50th year, and I was honored to attend the Camosun College, step away from what I know is my family, being around my family, having that support to just going out and exploring the world and learning. And I will continue learning, because as a nurse, that's what we do. We continue learning. Education never stops. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And while that microphone is being taken care of, I'll use this opportunity to thank our nurses and our medical professionals for working through the pandemic. Taking care of us all through very, very challenging circumstances, and I know they get a lot of pressure put on them, and a lot of them are putting in a lot of long hours, lots of overtime, and lots of they're getting called in when they should be like taking a little vacation. So this is the reality they've been working through. I know because I've dated a couple nurses during the pandemic. So Brad, young man, besides being a connoisseur of fine coffee, what have you been doing since you left the mighty institution?
Thank you, Art. And again, just honored to be with these folks up front here and to just be inspired in so many different ways, and much gratitude. Since moving on from Camosun, I had started a position, and it was a new position within, surrounded by Cedar Child and Family Services, and it was Cultural Programs Coordinator, where I supported programming for Indigenous children and youth and care. And I got to essentially build that program from the ground up because it was so new, and started to realize, where some of the gaps in services were for children and youth and care, and started to recognize where attention was required in terms of building that sense of belonging, but also comfort for those children and youth that, were either contending with being in foster care or being in temporary care and away from family. And so just through those years, really spent a lot of time focusing on what that indigeneity was, or what that identity was for those young minds and those young hearts, and it just allowed me to sort of build a greater understanding in terms of where the interests and needs were around child welfare as well, and the type of engagement that was required within other partnering institutions or organizations, and to ensure that we're influencing in a way that promoted their well-being at the center of the way that we practice always. And so, it continued sort of in that area of practice where, I got to just be with, learn from, and walk with children within our communities and youth from our communities, and allowing them to be the specialists in how they wanted to be looked after. And so as I started to build and grasp a better understanding of this, I, of course, aspired to challenge myself in the work that I do. And, I was on this journey of deconstructing colonial methodologies and the way that we as Indigenous people are represented in community. So I thought, what better way to do that than to go into the public service and join a provincial government? And so I applied to, again, another completely new position within the Ministry of Children and Family Development, and it was a provincial roots coordinator position, where, again, much of my focus was working with a team of about 30 amazing colleagues around the province that committed their practice to ensuring that Indigenous children and youth were connected to family, community, and culture. That was our sole purpose in terms of roots practice within the provincial government. And in that journey, again, learning to walk not only with colleagues, but with family and communities, and how do we create engagement and opportunities to ensure that our children are engaged not only with family, but with community and culture as well, too. And being able to commit that attention to that. Along with that journey, I had met a dear friend and colleague through the Public Service Agency, and Peg Christian, and she pulled me into a project that she was working on, and it was the design of some employment competencies for the Public Service Agency, and they're known as the Indigenous Relations Behavioral Competencies today. And through that journey, I got to sit as a special advisor to much of the work that she had done through that, and then committed over the years to supporting the design and continued design of those competencies into an interpretive guide for hiring processes as well too. And so I felt that it was interesting, you know, because my career was going into this place of, you know, focusing on HR and, you know, and human resources, and never imagined that I would end up sort of in this realm of practice. And then I was gladly headhunted by the Indigenous Youth Internship Program, where they required a coordinator to support the program. And so I gladly took, you know, this as an opportunity to expand my experience working within the public service. And for the first 6 years, I worked as the coordinator for the internship program, and then the last year as the team lead for the program. And all throughout that period, I had the opportunity to redesign our recruitment process within the Indigenous Youth Internship Program. And one that was directly engaged not only with Indigenous liaisons within post-secondary institutions, but also being able to meet and greet directly with Indigenous youth within those post-secondary institutions. And of course, naturally, we would bribe them with pizza. You know, in each place that we went, and you know, it was a quick way for us to meet directly with them, for them to ask her questions directly to us, and to speak to, you know, frankly, the challenges being an Indigenous person working within the public service as well too. Because as Indigenous people, it's not without its challenges. And, you know, you can't sugarcoat those experiences. And then I thought, you know, I was getting comfortable after 7 years within the Indigenous Youth Internship Program, that I thought I would return to the Ministry of Children and Family Development, where I was recruited by a relative, Chief Weatherly Speck, within strategic HR within MCFD. And began this journey of designing and indigenizing the HR process within the Ministry of Children and Family Development, where I got to focus on the hiring cycle of an employee from the job description, onboarding, to exiting interviews. And so it just led to this lovely space of not only learning experience, but balance, but the importance of recognizing and recruiting Indigenous people into the public service. As challenging as that is, as Indigenous people, it's important, so important for us to be in that space. And after, I guess, close to 8 years of committing to the Ministry of Children and Family Development, an opportunity arose recently within the last 5 months, where I was recruited by the representative of children and youth, where I sit as in a knowledge keeper role, and where it again is a new position, where I actually get to design the job description and the roles of the position. And so I feel very fortunate that many of the roles that I've had in my career experience, I've been able to grow from the ground up, you know, in terms of not only my experience, but the necessary folks to be partners in the work as well too, and the way that we look at that work. And so, you know, I couldn't have done it, of course, without the love and support of my amazing family. You know, all throughout our years in my experience working in child welfare, my family and I fostered for 12 years as well too. And, you know, just what I've learned over my career in my experience is that make goals. Always make goals in terms of, and it doesn't matter if you fail or succeed at those goals, because the failures are always going to be those learning experiences as well. And the successes will likely be small. But remember to celebrate those small things. And the other is that I've learned as Indigenous family and community, we get involved in specific areas of work because we're passionate and we're investing in the future of our communities. It's not just a career decision when we think about our employment. We're thinking about our community and how we move our community forwards. And that example is shining through the many folks up front here, and my gratitude to each of you. So, Eyēʔ Sqliwon.
Thank you, Brad. And if they're letting you design your own job description, maybe you can add a few more zeros onto that salary. I've been a speaker in his internship program, and it must give you a really, really proud feeling to see what some of those youth have gone on to do, because some of them have gone back to their communities, some have been working in public, and most of them are doing some pretty amazing things. And of course, we lost Sarah. She's like a niece to me, and she was making big inroads, and another one we lost to cancer. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Bailey, what have you been up to?
Thank you. My mind is just like flying with all these stories and inspiration, and so much gratitude for, the people sitting here really paved the way for me, particularly at Camosun and in my career. The path that was spoke about today around making that pathway clear, that did happen. That did happen for me. And since leaving Camosun, it was that springboard for me to go into UVic and go into the School of Social Work, specializing in Indigenous studies, and at that time, it was the program was for just Indigenous students, and that was such a special a time for me. The curriculum and everything that supported that program allowed me to explore my own identity, allowed me to dissect social work practice in an Indigenous way of knowing and being, and I feel so grateful for that. And Camosun, really, when you talk about the curriculum development in terms of giving back to community and how you didn't want to lose that, I'll tell you, that's something that drives me every day in my work. So it worked. That curriculum worked. From my time at Camosun and then at UVic, I actually did my practicum, my fourth year social work practicum surrounded by Cedar Child and Family Services, which was incredible learning for me, a delegated Aboriginal agency working with urban Indigenous children and youth. But I really recognized at the time I wanted to work in community. I didn't want to go right into delegated social work. I really wanted to do more voluntary services work. And so at that time I moved into, at the time it was called the Macola Tenant Support Worker role. Which I was so excited, my first social work job out of university. And I was so honored to walk those journeys with those families, advocating for them, for housing. Many, if not all the families I worked with were in some level affiliated with the Ministry of Children and Families. And really supporting those families through that process, and ensuring that their housing was unaffected, because at that time housing was a really big piece to having your children stay within your care. And so, walking some pretty stressful and some pretty upsetting journeys with some families. That led me into my next position, which was a family development worker within the Quentin Littell program at Eyēʔ Family and Community Services, where I again worked with families to mitigate the concerns that were brought forward by the ministry in order to have their children come back into their care. And that was the work that really shaped who I am as a person, but also a social work practitioner, being able and having the honor to sit with families in some of their most, the worst days of their lives, and you have the privilege of sitting with them, and being the person who can speak the systematic language that goes on, and advocate for our people, was really an honor. I then from there moved to Surrounded by Cedar as a guardianship social worker. I was actually on maternity leave with my first child, and I watched some TED Talk, and it was around women in leadership and how women coming out of the workforce to have children are at a disadvantage. And I got all fired up on my mat leave and applied for this job at Surrounded by Cedar. Coming out of maternity leave and going into a new organization and a new role, particularly in delegated social work, where the responsibility and the liability is higher than my previous position, was extremely, extremely humbling. I learned and still continue to learn all the gifts that our urban Indigenous people bring, the community that we have grown and built here. I'm just honored to be a part of. And now in my current role as the acting team lead, I'm ensuring that our social workers are out there in community practicing in a good way. We're so grateful to lean on and have the support of organizations like USMA and our other sister agencies here on the island. It really did come from my time at Camosun, where I developed this tenacity and fearlessness for our people, and that fire that continues, that giving back, that is my responsibility as an urban Indigenous person. It is a way of life. It's not just a job. The purpose that you get from giving back and being able to be on this journey with people is what gets me up every day. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenna. So this afternoon, it feels like I've been listening to healers of the mind, healers of the spirit, and healers of the body, and that academics was part of all of our healing, because we have holistic ways in our worldviews are based on holistic ways, and it just seems like academics is just one other entry point into that healing journey. And speaking of that, we'll hear next from Eddie, and what we're going to do is have a little loosening activity, a physical one. Our professional soccer player there will loosen us up before we have our question period, because I know you've been sitting there for a long time. Thank you very much for your patience. See, there's my Cree accent. I was just sounding like a DJ until I said patience. I'll turn things over to Eddie.
Hi everybody, I'm back. I just want to say something about where I come from first. I'm from the Camosun Nation, and my whole family experienced residential school. And almost 50 years later, we're still experiencing that trauma that got passed down from generation to generation. Now I have children of my own, and I have 2 grandchildren of my own. My hope is that one day my children won't have to experience the same fear that I have to live with every day, the same fear that many people here have to live with every day, of walking down the street and having people see the color of their skin and judge them right away. I don't want my children to grow up with that, and I don't want my grandchildren to grow up with that. Now, when I was a student at Camosun College, I never envisioned that I would be an advocate for Indigenous rights or a champion for residential school survivors. But that's exactly what me and Kristen have become. We were students in a classroom, and we were sharing a circle with Sandy Mitchell. And she asked us, what it is that you want in the 2-year program? What do you want to learn here? And Kristen said, I just want to find a place where I can belong. I thought about that for a long time, and I'm still thinking about that. I want to find a place where every single Indigenous person can say, this is my circle. This is the path that my ancestors created for me. Now, when I was 4.5 years old, I got taken away from my home. I got placed in a residential school. The first thing they did to me was took my identity away. Children were starved in these residential schools, physically beaten for speaking their own language. And they were beaten really bad for practicing their culture and tradition. This is our reality. Many people who went to residential school enter intergenerational families. This is our identity that they forced upon us. Today, at Camosun College, with all of these panelists, we're going to find our true identity by working together. Now, me and Kristen heard the story about a young lady from Williams Lake who started an event called Orange Shirt Day. And me and Kristen were sitting around at Camosun College, and we wondered, why doesn't Victoria have Orange Shirt Day? So we worked together, and we brought Orange Shirt Day to Victoria. And this is the design that we use, and we go out in the community every day. We talk to random people, we talk to health organizations, we talk to governments and schools, and we've even been invited back to Camosun to speak to many of the students there. My hope with the work that me and Kristen do is to inspire other people to be able to come to this circle and share their own stories. There's a young lady over there who was talking about, why are people like this? Why do we drink like this? Why do we have so much violence in our house? I grew up with that every day in my house, and I learned how to hate just like everybody else. Residential school did more damage to our community than they did to the Indigenous students that were taken away from their homes. I'll tell you how. Because they took the tiny little children away from their homes. They beat them, and they raped them, and they told them they were stupid Indians. They created the most perfect hate machine ever, with many years of abuse against children. And then they send them home. And what did these children do? They brought that hate, that anger, and that resentment, and that frustration into their house. And they introduced that same attitude to the siblings, to other family members. And what happened then? We have a lot of violence. Alcoholism any coping mechanism that we can find to help us run away from that pain, run away from that anger. I don't need to make up stories about what happened because I lived it. I was only 4.5 years old. I hate who I am today. I want to find a place where I can say, I'm proud of who I am. I want my kids to be able to say that. I spent most of my life drinking, trying to outrun my memories of residential school. But I quit drinking 25 years ago. And today, I walk beside Kristen. And our only hope is we can find some courage and strength to keep on doing what we're doing so we can inspire other people to come over here and stand beside us and share their own stories. Because if we don't talk about this problem, we're always going to be stuck in that really bad place, and we're always going to hate, and we're going to pass on alcoholism and drug addiction to our own children and our grandchildren. I don't want that. I don't want that to be my legacy to my grandchildren. I want my children to be able to look back and say, damn, they threw everything at my dad. They threw the worst things at my dad, and he got back up. I want my children to be able to say that. I want your children to be able to say that. It doesn't matter how much alcohol you drank, how much drugs you did, how much violence you experienced. You have something right here that's stronger than that. You have the teaching of your ancestors inside your heart, and that's something residential school will never, ever be able to take away. And you guys are proof of that. I'm really happy to be here today to share with you about what it was like to be a former student. And I'm very honored to be a representative of Orange Shirt Day with Kristen. And one other thing, Camosun has something to be proud of, is that 2 students walked out of this institute, went to the federal government, and said, you have to try bring a national holiday to Canada. And we did it. I don't think of myself as an advocate for residential school survivors. I don't think of myself as a champion for residential school survivors. I'm just trying to find my identity that was stolen away from me. And I think I'm on that journey now. And if I didn't meet people at Camosun College, if I didn't walk beside so many students, I don't think I would have got to where I am today. So I'm very grateful to be here. And I thank every one of the staff, every one of the single students who walked beside me and kept me up. I'm really grateful. And we have some pamphlets here for anybody who'd like to have some. Me and Kristen want to say thank you to everybody here who asked us to come here, especially Sandy. Thank you for inviting us. Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen.
Eyēʔ Sqαυ'lewen. Thank you, Eddie. Thank you very much. You're all still here. Amazing. How are the elders doing? Are you okay? Are you getting stiff? Oh, she wants to dance. Okay. She wants to move a little. So I'm going to turn things over to Dano. He'll get us warmed up.
I'll just, everybody just stand up. Just a quick stretch and just get that little space and get those arms, both of them at the same time. Just to stretch. Some of you are doing it already. And just a little wider, and just your left hand to your right. You can. And up. And to the other. And just one last one down to stretch that hams and or quads and hams. And just shake it out and just little couple step ups, and I think the stiffness goes away.
Okay, right on. Thank you. All right. Yeah, we can't forget the body part, right? Okay, we're going to turn things over, open up the floor. We've got a microphone up there. Anybody who has any comments or questions for any panelist or the group as a whole, the floor is open. And just, there's some, yes. The microphone is up there on the first level. So, just like Merv Griffin, he's going to move that mic around for you.
Hello, I am Catherine Anderson from the Career Lab here at Interurban. I am a settler and grateful visitor to the territory of the Wasanich and Lekwungen-speaking people. I am of American, French, Canadian, and mixed European ancestry on my mother's side, and Scottish and mixed European ancestry on my father's side. I am coming away from this panel today so terribly enriched by the experience of having witnessed your journeys and your stories. I am deeply steeped in gratitude for all of the things that you have shared here today. And I wanted to specifically identify myself as Catherine Anderson from the Career Lab, because for the next 8 months I am moving into a job development role here at the college, and I have a specific focus to help expand the opportunities that are available to our Indigenous students. I'm also interested in helping to connect with Indigenous employers. I really want to understand the workings of how we can attract Indigenous students to be able to perform work terms that help complement their co-op and internship capacity, as well as launching their careers as alumni. Each of you has been such a shining example of what is possible and how this institution has helped propel you forward in that journey. So I would just like to identify myself to the organizers here and to let you know that I plan to reach out and connect with you as organizers, and for the panel to know my name, because I do anticipate reaching out to you. I would be very grateful for any input, guidance, feedback, suggestions, or advice that you might have, and to let you know just how enriching this experience was. I just really feel so full from everything I have learned here today, and to thank you sincerely for your willingness, your time, and your perseverance to have overcome in the face of so many different obstacles that you have been faced with. Thank you. I hold my hands up to you. Haichka Siam.
Thank you very much. And know that these difficulties haven't gone away. They continue. They're happening up in Wet'suwet'en territory. They're happening all over the place. A lot of us still deal with, there's been a lot of deaths in our communities, and even more so since COVID. So that's the standard old thing when a lot of us were in school, having to raise money from your friends to be able to go home to a funeral. That's a part of our damn reality, right? And that hasn't really gone away. We still have a ways to go. Are there any more questions or observations or comments? Because there's no more food after this. You might as well ask a question. Wendy McDonald says you're amazing, then you're goddamn amazing. Are there still people on Zoom? We have no idea.
There were 20 people at the end, and throughout I think there's closer to about 80.
Okay. How are we going to, if there are no more questions, and hopefully there are, if it's not too late, if there are none, what is our next move? To move into? So does somebody want to take over? You got your own microphones? I don't know how to handle any of that stuff. Okay. All right. They're going to handle the remain. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being with us here this afternoon. Thank you to all of our speakers who are here. How about a nice hand for them all? Came here to share their stories with you. And hopefully you have gotten some inspiration and maybe a few ideas that you can also pass on to the people that you work with and the people that you're teaching. It's, yeah, a lot of us have we need that extra support and that extra encouragement. When I was in school, there was no such thing as cultural safety whatsoever. So we are in a much better place now. And I'm so thankful for all the Indigenous staff that work for our institutions that make our students feel more comfortable. I'm thankful that there are facilities like the Wilma Thomas Center, or is that her name? And First People's House. It's a cool place to hang out. Any comments from any of our presenters? Any closing comments from any presenters while we're doing this? How the hell do we end? Serious? Is there time? Yeah? You got time for a song? Okay. Want to be my roadie? My roadie. No, I've got everything I need now. Check, 1, 2. Speaking of, music, I chose a weird field, even though I do have a master's degree in Indigenous language revitalization from UVic. I didn't use it. I was already teaching Cree in town and developing Cree curriculum, so it didn't affect what I do at all. I continued also in the performing arts. And in fact, if you go home and you're at home by 6 o'clock and you've got no kids to feed, tune into YouTube, and they are releasing I have a single. It's called Aveline. It's actually being released today. It's on all platforms, Spotify and whatnot. But the music video is premiering at 6 p.m. our time. So tune in if you're not busy making popcorn for the kids. And this is a song about, I think it's fitting, it's called Cultural Survival. And it's our way of moving forward in the world without having to give up our identity. And in fact, strengthening that, re-strengthening that, and remembering who we are. Yo hey hey, yo yo hey hey, hey hey yeah yeah. Yo hey hey, yo, yo, hey, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Gitsumana toki tsigisagaya, yet the magino nano dusky, the magino wants to suck at the magino neo, the magino pioguskana, the magino neo. Hey, hey, yo, yo, hey, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. Gonna no gonna make no. Muchigita no gani yo I know. Muchigita no gani me to know. Muchigita no gani yo I know. That part in Cree is translates to we will rise again, we will sing again, we will dance again. Muchigita no guni me to know. Muchigita no guni yo I know. Muchigita no guni me to know. Muchigita no guni yo I know. Thank you. You've been a very wonderful audience. Drive safe, stay safe. COVID still exists, and just be careful out there. Thank you so much to the organizers. Are there any final words from the officials? Janice, Sandy, no final words? Yeah.
Jamie Gretsch Art, what a fabulous host you've been, and that music that you just shared made everything come around. Like Charlene was saying, full circle. It's been such a privilege to have you be part of this.
I'll say one quick thing, because I've never said it, but I've lived on these lands for 18 years, and I've stayed so busy, I haven't had time to nurture relationships or build relationships with the elders here enough. You know, I get to see them at places like this, so it really means a lot, because we have to embrace those elders that are around us and whose territories we're on. So in a way, we become family. I just want to thank them, because goddamn, life is short. We're losing a lot of elders. Thank you.
Powerful words. Yeah. We love you guys. And you know, I think we keep telling you we love you. And we listen to Eddie's words about belonging, that we've all struggled with that. And we love you so much. You just have all these, help us plant all of our feet on the ground. So my name is Jenna Simcoe. If anyone doesn't know me, I'm the Director of Indigenous Education here. So honored to be able to use the word, or the term Eyēʔ Sqwaaqlewen to describe our work. All of these panelists that we've had today have inspired all of the work that's been done across the college in the last 50 years. And we just have seen what an enormous difference lives can make to everything that we are and everything that we do. So I'm just touched and grateful and amazed by listening to all of your stories. We know that we had this idea of being able to do this in 90 minutes, and of course we were wrong. But it was everything that was supposed to be said was said. So thank you for the incredible gifts that you have given to us by sharing this and allowing it to be, you know, both in person and on video. I really do want to thank also my colleagues here at the college. I want to thank the support. First of all, Sandy Mitchell, obviously, if you've been listening, no, this wouldn't have happened without Sandy making it happen. She is a Wonder Woman. And got all of these quiet people who've been behind the scenes, some of them over there, Jody and my head just went Jen. And Rodney and Michelle and Sherry and Sandra, another Wonder Woman. So all of this took a lot of work and took a lot of thought, and Sybil, and a lot of engagement. And now we've had 50 years of incredible Indigenous people learning here. And boy, oh boy, if we were still around in 50 years, would it ever be something to see what the students of today and the students of tomorrow bring the world. We've just seen the first chapter. So, Chimigwech.
Yeah, I just want to echo some of Janice's words. I want to say Haichka, Gilakasla, Miigwech, Haichka, Kleko, Kleko, Hawa. Just really want to hold my hands up to all the speakers today. I just feel so incredibly blessed to be part of this community. Miigwech.
Good night, everybody. Good night. Whoa, there goes an earring.
Mine are yours.